In this video, we are uncovering the betrayals and distrust behind one of the most complicated alliances in modern history, the relationship between China and North Korea. China calls their bond a friendship sealed in blood, but does North Korea see it the same way? Did Kim Il-sung ever truly trust Mao Zedong? Why did he purge pro-China officials while still flattering Mao? And what's China's real stance on North Korea's nuclear ambitions? Before his death, why Kim Jong-il visited China 3 times in just 1 year despite his poor health? Stick with us as we dive into these untold stories. During the Korean War, China paid a huge price, with nearly 1 million casualties. Instead of gaining Kim Il-sung's trust, China faced deep resentment from him. The most important reason was military leadership. When Chinese troops entered Korea in 1950, a joint command was set up with Chinese commander Peng Dehuai in charge. This was a bitter pill for Kim to swallow, who clashed with Peng many times over this issue. Kim wouldn't forget and wouldn't forgive every humiliation from China. Seeing his generals becoming closer to the Chinese and sometimes even disobeying his orders made him feel threatened. Then, with China's million-strong army stationed in North Korea, they controlled all of North Korea's real network. As a dictator, Kim was deeply concerned. He had always turned to Stalin for help whenever he had a conflict with the Chinese, but Stalin always sided with China. With every compromise, resentment grew in Kim's heart. Mao knew about Kim's grievances. When Kim visited Beijing in November 1953, Mao offered around $330 million in aid to North Korea, despite China's destitution. Mao hoped Kim would be obedient, but he was wrong. In Kim's eyes, those pro-China officials in North Korea were his biggest threat. The safest way was to follow Stalin and Mao's example, launch a great purge, and build a cult of personality around himself. So in January 1956, he started purging the pro-China faction and eliminating any threat to his rule. As Kim's cult of personality took hold, his name flooded every corner of North Korean life. Anyone who appeared disrespectful was arrested, and the entire country was gripped by terror. In response, some officials tried to topple Kim in a field coup on August 30, 1956. Many of them were executed. Mao harshly criticized Kim for this purge. Such words only alienated Kim, who even started looking to send a representative to the UN to solve the Korean issues. Mao was furious. With Chinese troops stationed in North Korea, a crackdown seemed like the obvious solution, just like the Soviets in Eastern Europe. Yet eventually, he chose to compromise. In 1958, Mao withdrew all Chinese troops from North Korea. Then, Kim had the full freedom to do whatever he wanted. He eventually cemented his authority through a brutal purge. In his relationship with Mao, Kim Il-sung soon realized that by simply flattering Mao, he could ensure a steady flow of free aid. So when Mao's Great Leap Forward movement in 1958 was criticized by Khrushchev and almost all socialist countries, Kim was the only one who defended Mao on the international stage. Just as Khrushchev expected, the ensuing Great Famine claimed at least 35 million lives. However, Kim was a shrewd businessman, and he knew what to say and what not to. In return for Kim's support, in 1960, despite the ongoing famine, Mao sent him 230,000 tons of grain, and in the next few years, he gave Kim another $400 million in low-interest loans as a gift. As the Sino-Soviet split deepened, Kim leaned more toward Mao, and appeased Mao rewarded him with some borderland and even promised that Manchuria would be handed over to North Korea in case of future wars. Naturally, Kim Il-sung was thrilled. For him, this was a highly profitable friendship. Kim wasn't a fool. While flattering Mao, he continued mercilessly purging pro-China factions and erasing China's rule in the Korean War. From the late 1950s, North Korean textbooks started describing victory in the Korean War as being achieved under the great leader Kim Il-sung, with barely any mention of Chinese troops. War history museums mostly featured Kim Il-sung, and even the Armistice Agreement was only displayed in English and Korean, with no Chinese version. For Kim, the friendship sealed in blood claimed by China was just a wishful thought. He simply laughed it off. Unfortunately, even this superficial friendship didn't last long. In 1966, the Cultural Revolution quickly turned China into a massive madhouse, with the Red Guard turning society upside down. Unsurprisingly, North Korea saw China as a joke. North Korean officials even mocked. Mao had gone insane, and the only cure might be Korean ginseng. When such wars reached Beijing, the Red Guard threatened to arrest Kim, and even stormed the North Korean embassy. In reaction, the furious Kim ordered the destruction of the cemetery of the Chinese fallen soldiers in Pyongyang. Despite relations warming slightly in 1970 due to pressure from the US and the Soviets, the cracks gradually became irreparable. In 1975, as the humiliating and iconic footage of Americans leaving Saigon spread worldwide, Kim believed his chance had finally come. So, on April 18, 1975, he visited Beijing. His goal was clear: to start a second Korean War with China's support. But by then, China had decided to ease relations with the West. Moreover, Mao was old, plagued by illness, and had no interest in Kim's plans and politely rejected him. Kim was deeply frustrated, feeling that the Mao he once knew was gone. What Kim didn't know was that the worst was yet to come. As Mao's life neared its end, so did Kim's good days. In 1976, Mao passed away. The red sun had finally set. Following a fierce palace coup, Deng Xiaoping emerged as China's new leader. In Kim's mind, Deng was always courteous and warm. He was a staunch supporter and enforcer of Mao's every extreme policy. However, just like Beria reversed Stalin's policies in 1953, Deng transformed into a reformist overnight. This left Kim utterly astonished. In 1978, when Kim Il-sung met Deng Xiaoping again in Pyongyang, he found that the once approachable Deng had become cold and distant. Seeing Kim's golden statue, Deng snapped, "Is this what our aid is for?" Back in China, he slashed aid massively, and in later days, he outright rejected Kim's military aid request again. Throughout the 1980s, China embraced capitalism. The Chinese people's longing for freedom and democracy made them view North Korea as a relic of the past. Kim Il-sung felt the Chinese Communist Party had completely changed. However, when the People's Liberation Army massacred Chinese people in Tiananmen Square in 1989, a relieved Kim Il-sung found the CCP was still the party he knew so well. So he set aside his grievances with Deng and voiced full support for the suppression. But to his disappointment, China became even more committed to capitalism after the crackdown and showed little interest in aiding North Korea. Then, in 1991, even worse news reached Pyongyang. The Soviet Union had collapsed. With Russia's economy in ruins, there was no hope of any further aid from them. The final straw came for Pyongyang when China established diplomatic relations with South Korea in 1992. 2 years later, as tens of thousands of North Koreans starved to death, Kim Il-sung passed away in extreme loneliness with a sense of betrayal. North Korea had become an isolated island in the world. In this desperate environment, Kim Jong-il came to power. The announcement of his intentions to turn North Korea into a nuclear power caused significant global concern. He knew only nukes could protect his regime. In 2003, with the US preoccupied with the Iraq War, President Bush hoped China would mediate the North Korean nuclear issue. It was the era of Jiang Zemin and Jintao in China, a period of rapid economic growth. Strictly speaking, from 1992 to 2012, Jiang Zemin completely controlled China, with Jintao merely a puppet in the foreground. Jintao readily agreed to Bush's request and sent a special envoy to Pyongyang in the spring of 2003. From then until October 2007, multiple rounds of six-party talks were held, involving China, the US, North Korea, South Korea, Japan, and Russia. The US hoped China would restrain North Korea, but in reality, China was always secretly supportive of North Korea while pretending to comply with US demands. To be more precise, Hu Jintao wanted to restrain North Korea and even refused to visit Pyongyang until progress was made in the talks. However, Hu had no real power, as Jiang Zemin was controlling the situation from behind the scenes. It's likely that under the guidance of Jiang, Kim Jong-il pretended to support the six-party talks. In September 2005, he announced that North Korea would completely abandon its nuclear program. As a reward, Hu Jintao visited North Korea a month later. However, just 1 year later, Kim tested his first nuke and withdrew from the six-party talks in 2009. It was a humiliation for Hu Jintao, just like many others he faced during his 10 years under the shadow of Jiang Zemin. For whatever reason, it was a significant failure in China's diplomatic history. Relations between the two countries grew colder afterward. Hu Jintao joined the US in enforcing increasingly strict UN sanctions. However, he couldn't stop Jiang Zemin's faction from continuing to provide Pyongyang with at least $300 million in annual aid. In 2010, after suffering a stroke, Kim Jong-il invited Hu Jintao to visit North Korea to introduce his son, Kim Jong-un. Hu Jintao refused, left with no choice. Despite his poor health, Kim Jong-il visited China twice that year. Still uneasy, he made his final visit in May 2011. This time, he met with Jiang Zemin, the real power behind the scenes. After the sinking of the Chonan warship, the US, Japan, and South Korea stopped their economic aid to North Korea, leaving its economy in dire straits and in desperate need of Chinese support. But what Kim Jong-il truly cared about was China's promise to support Kim Jong-un. He was deeply worried about what would happen to his boy after his death. Meetings with Chinese leaders were far from pleasant. Hu Jintao angrily questioned Kim Jong-il about North Korea's involvement in the Chonan incident. And Wen Jiabao, the Chinese premier, refused his aid request, urging North Korea to reform and open up like China. The once proud Kim Jong-il had to swallow his pride, knowing that without China's support, Kim Jong-un wouldn't last long in power. In December 2011, Kim Jong-il passed away, leaving behind a young and inexperienced Kim Jong-un to lead an unstable country. There were doubts everywhere. Could Kim Jong-un manage such a tough situation without a solid backing from China? Meanwhile, Xi Jinping was on the verge of becoming China's new leader. The future was up in the air, full of uncertainty. It was clear that big changes were coming. By now, you've likely drawn your own conclusions about the so-called friendship between China and North Korea, without needing further explanation from us. But this is only the first half of the story. Next time, you will gain a complete picture of the relationship between the two countries as we explore the dynamics between Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un from 2012 to the present, the period most relevant to our daily lives. We will answer more interesting questions. Which high-ranking official in Beijing leaked key information to Kim Jong-un, triggering another great purge in Pyongyang that consolidated his power? And what role did China play in the assassination of Kim Jong-nam, Kim Jong-un's half-brother? Is Xi Jinping's leadership a blessing or a curse for North Korea? Please like the video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more high-quality content in the future. If you are curious about whether China truly won the Korean War and Mao Zedong's rule in it, be sure to check out our previous videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon.